basically, if you think about how this question has been asked in the literature, okay, the participation of immigrants in the political life of the host country has been seen as a human right issue, okay? So if you think about many destination countries, you see large populations of migrants residing there for a long time period, okay? And being not able to express their democratic rights is something which is very problematic, okay? From an economic point of view, when you think about the advantages of being able to express your democratic rights, what you think about are the policies which can be achieved, basically which can be shaped by the actions of your votes. Okay? So basically what you're thinking about is electing a politician to office who can actually represent the right of these minorities and actually affect the policy outcomes. There is plenty of evidence in developed and developing countries on this issue when it comes, for example, to the rights of minorities. In our previous work, we have also shown that enfranchising immigrants is very important in particular policy areas. For example, in the case of the United States, we saw that enfranchising immigrants has a very important role when it came to migration policy. Okay? The big issue is that the preferences expressed by the immigrants might differ from those of the natives. Okay? And so the trade-off basically is, on the one hand, you have representation which needs to be granted to every member of society. On the other hand, the preferences of the migrants might be not aligned with those of the natives. So when you see again at the literature, a lot of emphasis has been put on institutional factors. So if migrants are not allowed to vote, are not allowed to stand in elections, of course they will not be elected to office. Okay? On the other hand, some other studies have investigated the same questions in contexts where migrants are allowed to vote. Okay? And there a lot of the emphasis has been put on the actions by political party elites. So the idea here is that political parties can choose basically who to run for office, okay, and what position to attribute to those candidates. These are very important decisions because they will shape basically the likelihood that the candidate will actually be appointed to office. Okay? In our study, basically what we do is focus on one of these Nordic countries where migrants have the right to vote and have the right to stand for office, okay? And we show basically that in many local elections, even if you run for important parties, basically, political parties are not able to find enough candidates basically to run for local office, okay? So there is a supply side of the problem basically which has been understudied. This problem is particularly severe when it comes to migrant candidates because we show basically that very few people are actually willing to run. And we propose a mechanism to explain this fact. The mechanism we look at is basically has to do with the labor market outcomes of migrants, okay? And we are basically seeing that as basically the opportunity cost to run for office increase, basically an individual will be less likely essentially to take part in the political process. Why are migrants facing higher opportunity costs to run for office than natives? Well, there is plenty of evidence that migrants catch up over time with natives in the labor market outcomes. So their wage profile increases faster than those of natives. And thus makes basically their decision to run for office, for local office especially, more costly. So that's a very important point, in fact. So the analysis carried out in our paper suggests that if the policymaker wants to ensure representation for immigrant communities, even in those countries where migrants have formally the right to run for office, it is important that policy will be put in place which actually enable migrants to integrate very quickly in the labor market. This will basically reduce the gap in the incentives to run for office between natives and migrants and ensure their representation.